I'll resist the temptation to rise to his bait. We have, I think, 10 minutes or so if we want to have open discussions. We've got some colleagues very well placed to try and answer questions. If you have either technical or impact or implementation questions, we will do our best. So the floor is open. Please go ahead, introduce yourself.
I'm Alex West from GlaxoSmithKline. Amath, you mentioned that the structure of PSURs will change considerably. You didn't mention DSURs. Could you just mention how they might overlap?
Thank you very much for the question. The ICH E2C R2 guideline is under revision currently. So that is the PSUR guideline clearly. And within that expert working group, there is a plan to review the other two guidelines that are relevant. So the E2E, the risk management planning guideline, and also the DSUR E2F guideline. So there is a possibility that there needs to be a look across at those three guidelines to look at the coherence. But within the context of the E2C R2 revision, the plan is that the format and content of the PSUR will change, but there's no plan currently to amend the DSUR.
Thanks, Ulva. Other questions, comments, challenges, rants, concerns? Please go ahead.
Rachel Adams from Janssen. At what point will we be expected to use the new RMP template, and when will it be available?
Maybe I start and then maybe colleagues can support me. David Jeffries talked about phased implementation. Florian, at the stakeholder meeting on Tuesday, the Commission talked about the fact that we will need to have clarity on the transitioning and the interval. So issues like ongoing marketing authorizations, do they have to submit a risk management plan when they haven't before? If they've already submitted a draft risk management plan, will it be the old format or the new format? Clearly, we need clarity on those and many, many other questions. Now, the format that has gone out to public consultation from the Commission, obviously the Commission is going to be analysing the results of that consultation. The challenge for the agency and the Member State project team now on risk management plans is, given that there's a slightly moving target in terms of the Commission's implementing measures, we're trying to mature a draft of a good vigilance practice chapter on risk management planning, and our aim, it's not a commitment, it's an aim, is to go out to public consultation in January, probably late January. But obviously we need to get some more detailed feedback from the Commission before we can do that. My crystal ball will suggest that there will be some explicit transitional guidance on moving to the new risk management requirements. And I don't know if either from a Commission perspective or a Member State perspective, you're on the risk management team specifically, Ulva. I don't know if you want to give a specific comment on that.
No, I don't think so, other than GVP will help to clarify expectations and that the transitional requirements need input from the Commission.
Oren, do you want to comment?
Yeah, I think the phasing in of the new legislation requires clarity on transitional questions on several aspects. And yeah, we have also asked with the concept paper on the implementing measures where the stakeholders would see need for transitional measures. And we are prepared to looking at that, but I cannot give you now details that at that date a specific requirement would kick in. But I would expect that there is a kind of transitional phase between the old or the current system and the new system. And yeah, obviously all the measures build on each other. So we have to have clarity on the content, we have clarity on the content of the legislation. We're currently discussing the content of the implementing measure, and only then on these measures can build the guidelines and templates. So obviously with this stepwise approach, we cannot do everything at the same time. But I think with transitional measures, there is a possibility to address concerns in this regard.
I want to make a false promise, but there is a lot of discussion going on within the implementation project teams and with the Commission about the need for guidance on transitioning, and I would anticipate that there will be information made public hopefully sooner rather than later in 2012, because clearly for your planning purposes you need to know where you stand. And I think it's very, David Jeffrey's comments were pertinent. I mean, with a change project of this size, we need to try and have as much certainty as possible. What we can't do is give certainty when we don't know the answer, where a decision isn't taken. But as soon as we do, we need to communicate that effectively. And I think that's a challenge for us, but it's a challenge we need to try and rise to. So, sorry, over to you, please.
Okay, Corina Schmidt from GSK. I had understood that in the case that post-approval safety studies are required, there would be a review process for these by the PRAC. And how would that then work in the context of a new application in a centralized procedure? Would that then have to be all dealt with within this initial timelines of the procedure, because it could become quite difficult to have that all dealt with in the procedure?
I think the honest answer to that is don't know. And I say this under Ulva's control, because Ulva again has been very involved in the process discussions, but we've done high-level process maps, but we're now doing more detailed process maps for the different scenarios, and there are lots of different scenarios. We've got nationally authorised products, we've got centrally authorised products, we've got post-authorisation safety studies in one member state where there'll be scrutiny of the protocol at member state level, versus in more than one member state where it'll be done at the PRAC level. We will have certain situations where we might want to have certainty about key elements of the protocol before we grant an authorization, whereas for others it might be more appropriate to defer that to post-authorization. So there's not one answer. I would imagine that in certain circumstances we will try and have that process done at the time of the authorization, but it'll be very challenging. And I would imagine that what we may well do in certain circumstances is put key elements of what we want in terms of the objective of the study into the marketing authorization, and then the actual formal protocol approval process would be post-authorization. But it's very difficult to give a one-size-fits-all answer to that. Please, right at the back, sir, over to you.
Nick Sykes from Pfizer. We heard yesterday around budgetary pressures being put on the agency. I just wondered whether you could comment around what those pressures might mean for the implementation of this piece of legislation, or has there been a budget for its implementation ring-fenced so that there would be no impact and the whole gamut of the legislation will be implemented on time, no matter what the agency's budget is for next year?
That's probably for me as the only agency representative on this panel. I'm treading very carefully as I give my answer. So the management board of this agency meets on the 15th of December and will address these issues explicitly, including the draft budget for 2012. The current budget for 2012 contains no additional funding for the pharmacovigilance legislation. We are working very closely with the European Commission to see if in the spring what might be called a bridging budget might be found from the European community budget, but you can imagine that there are an awful lot of pressures on the European community budget at the moment, certain financial crises and so on going on in member states. What I can say with confidence is that we are looking at the public health implications of the legislation, and we will do as much as we can through reallocation of resources, through process improvement, through efficiency gains, to implement, in public health terms, the most important parts of the legislation. But I think it's also fair to say that on the 1st of August, I don't think I'll be going on a long holiday thinking that everything is signed, sealed, dusted, fully implemented, and so on. It will inevitably be a phased implementation, but we'll do as much as we can with the resources we have. I think one other thing that is only fair to say is that as soon as we do have some certainty, and again, it comes back to what David was saying, we will go public. I doubt if that will be in December, because the management board is the 15th, and it'll be really important we get the communications right so that they're digestible, understandable, and don't raise more questions than they answer. But I would imagine, and this is not a promise, it's what we're hoping for, is that we'll come out in January with communications on what people can, not with all the transitional guidance, but on what people might expect to see, processes that will start, others that might not start in 2012. I think that was probably as full an answer as a brave man would give. Other questions or comments? Please go.
I have a couple of questions, if I am allowed. One is for Florian. The new directive doesn't allow any transitional period in which the two systems are working together. So is that right? If it is that right, my question is the Commission confident that all member states will not only implement in due time this directive, but in the same way, which could be a miracle?
First, the directive clearly says, the new rules shall be applied from 21st of July 2012 by all member states, and it's the task of all member states to do their job by then. And if there are problems after that date, then the Commission has means to closely monitor the situation and to ask member states to do swift action to remedy any failure in this regard. And nevertheless, I would say if you have this application date 21st of July or 2nd of July for centralized products, the legislation allows for a phasing in period. So there is a certain room of maneuver to say not everything must kick in at this point in time. I would imagine, for example, that referral procedures and so on will start as foreseen in July. When we will have the PRAC, then PRAC will be involved in all pharmacovigilance, and referral procedures will be applied according to the new requirements. This is, I think, without a doubt, I would say.
Yes, thank you very much.
But according, in relation to more technical details, we may see some phasing in period.
Sure. Thank you very much. And it's a proof of maturity of the European Union in this case, indeed. My second question is very short for Holland, is a technical question. Can you please clarify the differences, in one word, between a pharmacovigilance master plan and the detailed description of the pharmacovigilance system, and if these two documents will coexist, one for the company and the second for the product, or the pharmacovigilance master plan would replace deleting the DDPS?
My understanding is that the objective is to decouple from the product, so to focus more on the system, so that we see the replacement of the detailed description of the pharmacovigilance system as part of the marketing authorization with the summary, which is more system based. But the detail is in the implementing measure. But I think the key objectives, as I see it, are around simplification, efficiency gains, linked to decoupling from marketing authorizations, and removing some of the burden around variations, both for industry and for the regulator. And the second area is in relation to having a system approach rather than a product approach.